All right. Buenas noches. Good evening. Welcome to all in this Monday, starting the week, last day of August. Last day of August seems such a crazy thing to be saying right now. Last day of August. We've been at this for 5+ months, and it doesn't feel that way. It does not feel like 5 months. So, welcome to I'm changing the name of this space. Welcome to Tertuliando en Cuarentena, which basically is gathering in quarantine, conversing, conversating, exchanging stories, in this accidental, intentional, and intentional accidental space. And whomever is watching, welcome. Whomever is watching post live, also welcome. Always free to read comments and ask questions. Tonight we have special guests. Each and every one of my guests is very special. So tonight we have a special guest, never the exception. Um, Good friend Samir Selmanovic is tuning in and joining us from New York City. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation together. We will be cooking a conversation together, and that might be a little bit of a pun to some of the topics that he might be talking about tonight. So, without any further ado, let me hit the magic button and bring him on board. Saludos.
Hello, hi Angel. So good and honored to be here among all of these guests that I've seen, and so it's just so exciting to be.
Well, man, it's a privilege and honor to have you here and to be conversing face to face, even if to a virtual manner, is nonetheless a privilege and an honor. So, gracias. Thanks for joining us tonight. Something that we like, or I've accustomed to kind of starting conversations in here is talking about the current context, talking about the current setting where we find ourselves in these times of pandemia and these times of quarantine. We're like I said before, it's been 5+ months of this, and I'd like to start off talking about that. How has that been for you? In particular, it's a bit of a three-part question where what were you doing in those early months of the year? Like how does this welcome you in these new times of pandemia in terms of what you were doing? How have you been navigating this? What
Mhm.
reflections, what dynamics of mental awareness have come through it? How has it affected you? And the third part of the question is what diagnoses or what observations have you made in terms of society, in terms of this bringing stuff afloat, bringing stuff to the surface? So, what were you doing? How has this impacted you in the run of the 5+ months? And what things do you think this pandemic has brought to the surface in terms of society?
Thank you. You asked this so beautifully. I'm now curious. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, we all were surprised, and we were surprised, which is strange that we were surprised because we are coming back to how history was for a long, long time. Um, People have all kinds of limitations, all kinds of things happening to them, from wars to. So we are sort of coming back to more of a mainstream long-term history of things, and we are all adjusting that sort of big things that we feel will stay forever and never change are suddenly all disrupted. It's like we were ants and somebody lifted a stone. And it's
Mm,
like, really? Oh my goodness. Like there's a whole, like, what's happening? Uh, so that was surprising and interesting. And uh, because it was also like a shocker how quickly we adjusted and called upon some of our capacities to cope and see the world differently and find and being able to shift. At least in New York, it was like that. Uh, it suddenly became like Jewish Sabbath for a long time, you know. and we never thought we could do it. We could afford it, a lot of things, but then we could. And then it's all mixed with these political pandemic going on, intertwined, which is like way more sort of harsh, I feel, and potentially way more devastating and difficult. I spent the last couple of years traveling in the bus with a group of people throughout the 50 states and organizing rallies to try to convince religious voters to, dig deeper into their worldview and their experiences and come to their senses. And so now when this happened, it just stops us in our tracks because it was all in person. So what was most difficult for me, we had to really quickly readjust and create robust online programs on how to reach people and speak to people. And at the beginning, a lot of people had a lot of energy to be on the Zoom and live in a digital reality. We quickly saw that this connection that you and I have is all we have, and that we have to take it seriously, that you are not just a two-dimensional picture that is moving and I'm like half present with you. I have to respect that little square as though you are here in person. I have to employ my imagination to take that square as a living being, right? I cannot smell you, I cannot touch you, I cannot hug. You don't know what's happening outside of my rectangle, but I have to look through that wormhole and be here, right? And then people over time got tired of that, fatigued a lot through that contact. So that was a kind of obviously the issues with quarantine and a regimen we have as a family, of behaviors and hundreds of rules. And we were in New York. I mean, it was like I didn't touch my wife for 2 weeks. I mean, touch her. And then it was just like really, really a new place, and we were aware that we are living in something that's like historical, and that it doesn't matter, that we have to trust each other and the people who tell us what we need to do, because we entrusted them with that. So trusting God in a way comes to trusting people. The only way to trust the universe is to trust God, sort of like some sort of spiritual reality, is to trust people. And that's very hard to, it was hard for a lot of people in the United States to get that trusting people, it's not something naive or loss of freedom. It is actually the way you trust life that has brought you so far. And it takes a long, long time and a lot of work for you and I to be here. A lot of loves of a lot of people over 100,000 years happened so you and I can be here. So life is on our side, and this is the moment to trust it back. And I feel that was a journey for me. And even now, not knowing what's going to happen with the elections, I still like hang on to this trust in life as much as I, with my fingernails, sort of thing.
You mentioned that kind of sort of referencing that loving heritage, like that maybe love being passed down. I don't know, but you said that, and I thought of this Mr. Rogers quote where he used to practice this dynamic of asking people to to be silent for a moment and and reflect about those people that love this into being. Those people that through their actions throughout their lives um, partook of something that settled within us that
Mm,
that was quite formative, and
mm,
I think that merits. I mean, even I don't know if I could darely say this, but um, even maybe at some times when we've had maybe a bit of shitty times or shitty lives. I mean, maybe can't really speak for people who have really suffering lives, but hopefully there's at least one person that, even if it was for a micro moment in their lives, probably made them feel quite important. Like but it's a worthy space to take out and reflect about um, spaces or moments or people who might have influenced or might have parts imparted
mm.
some kind of love in our lives, but that requires reflection. And I think in this time of being of having to halt and stop so suddenly, uh, we have been invited in a consequential way to reflect
Mm.
of the sustainability of the pre-corona times, and how how do we want to not return to that? Perhaps the go
Yeah.
go go, the rush is not very sustainable, and
Mm,
the narrative of going back to normal has always been a bit overrated to me.
mm,
um I also like to ask guests, in a way that we can get to know them a little bit more,
mhm,
that if they can, to share experiences, maybe three experiences that so I'll ask it to you in second person because you're right here with me. So if you
mhm.
can share two experiences that you feel have been transformative in your life, cathartic, catalytic experiences that you feel have in one way or another shaped who you are now, all the
Mm.
way back to when you were maybe a kid, or just very recent mementos in life that you feel had to do with the formation of who you are as
Yeah,
of now.
yeah. Hmm. I mean, this is yeah, it's really a uh, question of attention and imagination. If I look back, what do I pay attention to at the moment,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and what
Hindsight, yeah.
and what everything that happened in the past is important, and it is how much imagination you give to the meaning of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, like myth forming, like how we form myths and stories and give
yes,
significance.
yeah, it reveals our stories, sort of, that hold us, and I feel like hmm, uh, yeah, I would say. I would say, so one obviously important experience in my life um, was I grew up in a Muslim family in Croatia, and I in a sort of atheist environment, and I had this like a born again experience, and that experience was uh, quite a rapturous experience. I mean, it is almost like you're flying.
Mm-hmm.
It is just I I don't know if any drug can compare to that. And it is a sense that everything will be good with the world, and that somehow things will work out, and that I couldn't articulate it even then, but I can articulate it now. It was a pure experience. It was not an experience of excluding anybody or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
it was a mystical experience of sort of knowing that my life and my meaning and who I am is not the most important thing. You know, I'm part of something larger than myself, and you realize that, and it gives you such a buoyancy and such a patience and such a joy that you're able to like zoom out and see that. You know, obviously later in life, that all through organized religion got all like entangled and screwed and, you know, and tightened and nailed and blocked in an amazing way. But it is a pure experience that I constantly come back to and repeat in my life. And you are sort of reiterating that same experience over and over again, and discovering that that experience is available in an ordinary life. And that we change not just when we are 18, we change and we are, you know, 38 and 58 and 88. We have opportunity to cross a threshold, let something go, and restore our perspective of how we see the world, right? And it is just that kind of opening of eyes again and again in a new season of your life. It opens differently each time. And I feel it is kind of started that in a conscious way for me. Obviously, probably started when I was a kid, and it starts with all of us. We just don't have awareness of it. We just experience it, and it was just kind of like but once you can kind of at the same time experience it and observe yourself, that's kind of grows over life. So that would be one. Second one would be the one I think about often is my daughter. When she was in high school, it was just, you know, she's the younger daughter. She's like 22 now, and she had this, you know, it's a like huge school, 5,000 students in Bronx, and it's in New York, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm scared for my little daughter. You know what's happening with her, and drugs and sex and hip hop and who knows what. It was sex and drugs and rock and roll in my time, but you know, so and I noticed that things are happening with her, and our communication was not really functioning properly, right? So I tried to talk to her, and she said, well, she was not responsive. She was just keep thinking what I was thinking at that time. Dad and mom don't have a clue about anything. And then I noticed on her that my questions that I asked her were all sort of questions that I tried to make a point, right? And then I made a conscious decision to ask only the questions for which I didn't have an answer.
Real questions.
Yeah. Ask her questions and allow myself to enter and name and encounter the unknown. And allow myself to be in that unknown. And everything shifted at that point. I feel everything kind of like moved. And with both of them, it was also a situation where they were going into the unknown and I was going into the unknown, and we helped each other basically say, look, I have never been a parent of a teenagers before, and you have never been an adult. So I'm lost, you're lost. Can we help one another, right? Go into a place neither you nor I have been before. And that way, the story continues. The storytelling continues. There is a tension. There is a knowledge. There's obstacles. There's all kinds of things happening. But it's not polarized between us, but it's both of us going into a new place. And that made me think of this story of a hero's journey, hero's journey, how that hero's journey story has run its course today. And it's not serving us anymore. Because with a hero's journey, to have a hero's journey, you have to have a villain and a victim. And you are somehow positioned against the world, and the world is against you. I don't think the world is against you, and I don't and there is no like redemption for a villain. Villain's purpose is to be obliterated. The dragon cannot become a pet,
No.
you know. So, but if it's an immigrant story, right, it is that both you and I are lost and we need each other to enter the unknown,
Yeah.
in which we can find and re-find our home. So our strength is curiosity and asking and vulnerability and learning a new language and learning a new way of being and being patient. It's not a conquest. It's not a showdown. So I feel like Joseph Campbell thing, it's not only that's how we lived in history, but we sort of live into that myth, like a John Wayne kind of world. Like, all the sports are competitive sports. We don't as a nation watch Tai Chi on a screen. We watch who is going to win and who is going to lose, because that's how the world works, right? So for me, it was a aha moment, because I realized that things happen in the world when I step with one foot into the unknown, have one foot into the known, and I'm in an awkward place. And change is going to occur to me, not the way I want it, but the way I am and the way the world wants it too. So it's not going to be what I want in the world. It's also the world needs to find me. And it has its own will for me. And I need to respect it. Because I need to be there for other people.
Yeah.
And they have their dreams. And I need to fit into their dream as well. Like into their story, and they fit into mine. So other stories don't exist to serve mine.
Like the protagonist. You're not.
Right. So that's that was like two things that come to mind these days. As I'm thinking how to find sense of wholeness and safety and security in the liminal space in which past is gone and future is not yet here. Right. And this capacity to not know is just an amazing capacity for a human being. Because if you don't, that capacity allows you to fall in love and stay in love. Because if I come to my wife and say, I know you, that's the end.
Yeah, I figure it out.
Good luck figuring me out, because I don't know myself. I'm glad you know me, but I don't know myself. So not knowing is this a way of graciously leaving the opening to people, communities, everything in the world to make use of your life and has its claim on you, right? Well, at the same time, you need to stand and be yourself. So there is like this tension there, and you live in that conversation between you and the world, and in that life is that conversation that you are constantly close to something but never arrive, and that's that. So I'm trying to find out how to survive that space. We all are in that liminal space, but one of the ways to do first is to know that it is there and to accept it.
Consciousness of it.
Yeah.
Awareness of it. Then you are held with the responsibility of having to do something about it. Which is an ongoing, it's an ongoing good dilemma to have, because it means that, you're touching onto something, you've touched onto something, and that means that you're moving somewhere. That's good. I'm not a father. I've never had kids. Closest thing is my nephew and my niece, and I like that which you shared about you and your daughter, where the awareness of, asking questions to make a point. It's like how much we interact in such a manner. Like they're
Mm.
like you're your own attorney, and you ask questions to file down a verdict and to to get to that
Mhm.
to get
Mhm.
to that finality that is going to draw the last checkmate.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's a bit sabotaging
Mhm.
if one's intention is to have a real honest exchange
Mhm.
where you might even be surprised at the other party's response, or what the other party has to share. And walking in that manner in how we relate to one another. I want to ask you maybe a follow-up question in regards to that, like, because it is kind of disarming to really attempt to have that transparent, honest conversation, because you really don't know. And I connect that a little bit with what you were saying about being in the unknown space. I have so many conversations like that to make a point, and that's me trying to have a conversation that I'm like genuinely trying to get the other person's feeling. How how has it been for you to, as you share that story, and
Mhm.
that story means something to you, have you have you tried to carry that story in other spaces, like the experience of that story of conversing to really getting to know, not to make the final point. How has that and if you have, or maybe you haven't, but how, if you have, how has it translated in other spaces that maybe you've realized that, this is something worth replicating, but it might not be so easy. So in essence, have you attempted that? If you might want to see it like an experiment, and have you experimented that experience in other relationships, and maybe how has that kind of,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. It sometimes it's like you think just sometimes it's I'm completely taken and I completely forget about it. Like that, everything I just said to you about unknown and all of that, and you are like a survival sort of mode, and it can be a form of like a fear or frustration or anger or any of that, you know, very easily. So it's not easy to translate it to other places, but it's almost like there is a certain spasm in the person, like a muscle, right? And then that spasm is there all the time, and then you experience that muscle releasing once because of the context that I have with them, because of their love and their wisdom. I ask them, like, you got to help me be a good parent, because I'm preparing for the final disappearance, at my age, I can see the ending, the symphony at the end sound, I can hear it. And I'm not in touch with your school and where you are. So you help me out. And that works out. And then you feel reward of not knowing that comes. You come to another relationship, and that spasm is like immediately there again, like again. But then you think about what happened before, and it starts to release, right? More and more. And you know that you will survive if you don't know, if you don't make your point, that you will actually survive, and that there is a life bigger that is holding you. And so, yeah, I mean, right now, I feel like with some people, on Facebook or other places, I just don't have time or energy, we have to sort of all of us ration our heart sort of to things that matter really, and our time, because you can't address everything.
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, I I find myself in a sort of a roller coaster, all the time. It's not like it's easy to do so. But what I was going to say is, the moment you actually, the moment you do it and you actually say, what is really the question that I want to know?
Yeah.
Not that I want to make a point. What it is that I really want to know. You just thinking of that makes you alive. Right away, you come to the edge of being alive completely. And it really, it translates to other person as energy and presence and kindness and respect, because you have dared to come to that edge of what you're really thinking, right? And that's, so I think coming to that growing edge is as quick as naming what is going on for you.
Yeah, like it's kind of like having a transcendental moment if one catches the realization of that. Perhaps maybe kind of a freedom, like a
Right.
like a gasp, like a relief. It's
Mhm.
having so much perhaps unnecessary tension on one's shoulders that maybe one doesn't even know one is bearing, and it's so I think and it's so burdenful to come into a relationship or come into an interaction so loaded, and then and there's an explication, there's an explanation to it, um, in the times that we're living in, just stretching this perhaps to people we don't exactly maybe relate with, or we're entering into a relationship, that the environment is so tense that we might kind of bring all that armor into the I need to make this point. Kind of like we can become our own little colonizers. Like
Right, right.
I need to with whatever truth it is that we might have. I need to kind of bring that truth banner into it with however benevolent our intentions might be. Because I think the environment is very tense, especially allocating it here in the United States. And it's very, very, very tense. So tense. It's kind of to even move through the air is hard. It feels there's so much resistance, and
Yeah.
so some things could be justified in the sense that there is that loadedness, but the to amplify that reflection into other areas, not necessarily bringing it into our current social political context that definitely brings tension, is worthy of noting. That how we converse, how we interact, how we are exchanging information, ideas, thoughts, experiences, to have a level of transparency. And and the little I know about you, I Jesus, time passes and it doesn't seem like it passes so fast. But I lived in New York for a little bit over a year. I used to attend Jay's church over there when he was Jay
Mhm.
Baker when he was over there. And I remember I probably went a couple times to Faith House when you guys were holding the Faith House Manhattan project, and I thought it was so phenomenal. I think one of the things that really caught my attention was the hymnal that you guys had. There was this hymnal you guys had, and it had a series of quote unquote secular songs,
Mm.
and I thought it was so brilliant. I was maybe without putting it into words, I was looking for that type of dynamic where I was kind of erasing those lines of secular and worldly. Uh, I thought it was such a futile construction of here's the worldly and here's the spiritual, And then having you guys seeing, and during a service, what a wonderful world. To me, it seemed like such a liberating experience to experience it in that quote unquote sacred space. So I think that project was quite phenomenal. And I want to ask you a little bit, maybe so you can illustrate, how that project, kind of what was behind that project and how it came to fruition. What were you kind of trying to
Mhm.
communicate and build along other people with that particular project and in that particular time?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that was a project for a lot of us when at a time it was kind of like 9/11 happened, and then after that we realized that that our religion is not responsible only to the followers. It is largely responsible to the world. So that we all, in all of faiths, I mean, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, atheist, we all felt like, however I'm holding my faith, I cannot just keep answering my own questions and living under my own assumptions. I actually owe it to those who are not uh, sort of members or who are not part of my story. I have to take their questions seriously, and I have to construct my faith so it's a blessing to people who are not part of my group and will never be, right? And we were keep giving answers, that those questions are not relevant, that those questions are not important, that doesn't matter, in our congregations. And then we said, okay, well, how about if we create a space in which it's like a living room, and you have invited your neighbors who are from different faith, and the rules of behavior will be like we're in a living room,
Mm.
right? So you don't have to become a Hindu if you have come to a Hindu living room, but you participate in their life and what they do, and they teach you, not just by telling you, but you enter the experience with them in some way, because you're hospitable and you're a good guest, and you feel safe in your own story to be able to step into their story and walk with them through it, walk through their part of the forest, being
Mhm.
there, under their sky, feel the feet under their feet, instead of constantly interpreting what they're doing through your measuring sticks and the way you see the world. And um, and that for all of us has become like really, really beautiful thing. Like, it was so attractive, and we decided, yeah, well, okay, let's find a way to live together, to learn from one another, and figure out how can we get more deeply into our own stories by creating the boundaries around our stories that are made of connections.
Mhm.
Meaning, we all need boundaries, and we all need our stories, and be specific. You can't live all the stories at the same time, right? We all have specific stories, and we have identity. And the moment you create something is the moment you exclude something, right? And so, how can the boundary between me and you be a bridge rather than a wall, or a door rather than a wall, or a window? These are all, like, Manhattan has 27 crossings, like bridges and tunnels, and,
Yeah.
and it has identity. So, connection makes an identity. Google is made of of connections, but it has identity. So, it is possible to actually deepen your identity by taking off the the perceived need, for these walls. And that's how we started, and went for years. Um, but what has transpired and over the years is um, that people are overwhelmed with diversity.
Mm.
There's so much complexity, they don't even know who they are. It's like asking people to consider menus from the other restaurants when they don't even know their own menu,
Yeah.
right? So they are so weak in their own stories, they're so distracted, they're not practitioners, they're not. So it actually people getting deeper into their own story connects people more than actually being superficial on all the stories a little bit. At least for our sort of, it was mostly like Abrahamic religions and situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that was where it went, and I got involved with the Occupy Wall Street and the Wall Street people. I tried to bring them together and organize several events. One downtown there in a public space, one at the Union Theological Seminary, and I brought occupiers and people who were working on Wall Street, but because they were not giving permission by compliance offices in their companies, they could not show up, right?
Oh, wow.
But I knew a lot of them, and so I had to sort of like get their coaches or people who were serving them and know everything, but they could come, and many of them could not come and be seen. So there was like senior vice president of one of the largest banks in the United States, and I knew him well. I met him in some seminar, and then we went for like regular lunches every month. And I told him what I'm doing, and he came with a hoodie, and he says, "Please don't tell anybody I'm here.
Wow.
This cannot be in the news, right?
Wow.
That I am here, right?" And the idea there was the same as in a faith house, is that the other might be hiding the answer you need.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if you are really believing what you're doing as an occupier, can you conceive that perhaps the leader of the Occupy movement that will bring you into promised land is now working in Goldman Sachs?
That's heavy.
If you cannot create space for that person to find you and you find them, then there is no future. There is no future. There must be a way that there is something greater than you and your identity and what you want. The idea is greater than your sense of belonging here.
Mm-hmm.
That you need to allow for that, right? And occupiers, 99% of them were very dismissive, very sarcastic about anything.
Yeah.
And it was obvious that it's gonna just, run itself into the ground because of that.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those experiences, where you can take, because the interfaith conflicts and identity issues can be translated in a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Because religions have been fighting for, tens of thousands of years.
Yeah. There's a long legacy of that. That brings us to where we're at. The present where we're at.
Yeah. So like a lot of people who are in the interfaith movement totally understand what needs to be done now politically, but nobody is asking them. They don't have they cannot do it. They cannot speak out because they know how to hold your identity in a difficult place when you have been hurt and mistrust the other and move forward. And it hasn't been built as a public treasure, people who have been involved in these kind of movements in the past. So, and I hope it is going to happen, but one way or another.
When you release your book, it's all really about God. That's the name of it, right?
Yeah, it's real about God.
It's really all about
Judaism made me a better Christian.
When you release that book, does that book kind of convey a little bit of what Faith House was kind of trying to?
Yes, largely. Although the moment it was published, it was already sort of getting into design and print, and I called the publisher and I said, I want to change the name, and they said, we say, it's too late, but what would it be? It would be like the God I cannot own, or it's really not about God.
That would have been nice.
Yeah, because at least I know that God is not all about God. That God is not so self-important.
I like that. Reminds me of a Peter Rollins story
Yeah,
about God revealing to the philosopher someone that he doesn't exist.
right,
Um,
right, right.
I think it's phenomenal. Do I have a very fond memory, and I share this story so many times. I think I've probably shared it in this Tertuliano, and it's a story that you share, and it's a story. I don't know how I came across it. I think it was probably one of sermons that you did that was available online that got my attention. And it's a story that you take out of the movie Black Robe. Um,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
it's a
right, right,
story
right.
where you I mean, and this is when I am in that ongoing road of deconstructing my faith. I mean, and it led me to where I'm at, and it continues to lead me. Even now that I consider myself agnostic atheist, but in that journey, I that and even to the day that story resonates to me so much. And then I went to watch the movie, and I thought it was so beautifully. I mean, just the movie, and then I hear kind of like your dissertation of it, um,
Mhm.
of this idea of the substance of the Jesus. I don't know if that might be kind of what people refer to as the cosmic Christ,
Mhm.
but I was so suspicious of the formulaic expression of faith that I found in church of altar call, check mark, you're good, kind of like this factory like faith. Like you did this process, you're good. And there was a point I started becoming very suspicious of that. I'm like, how does this convey this ethereal realm of a God or a presence that is transcendent to everything? That I was maybe in a church service, and then maybe I had diarrhea and I was in the bathroom and I missed the outer call. And then I go outside and I get run over by a truck, and then that's it for me. And that's, this sort of automatization
That
of
should.
faith.
Oh man, there should be a comedy movie about like.
So when I hear your story, I'm like, holy shit, this makes so much sense to me, because there's so much that's going on beyond what we say, beyond what is formulated in words or expression, or in writing. And then what you talk about, this chief of this tribe and this sort of weird in and out relationship he has with this Jesuit priest. I thought it was so phenomenal. And if you can, I mean, since I have you here, could you share a little bit of what this thing you call substance, like the substance of Jesus, or that substance? You might have different expression now. I mean, this was some years ago, and I know we constantly evolve. But if you can share about that, maybe you can share a little bit about that story from
Mm.
that movie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a that's a long and deep and I think beautiful rabbit hole, to go into, because it's such a freeing thing, and it has twists and turns when you go in, because we do need some sort of identity and sense of boundaries. But I in the movie, these Jesuit priests witnesses to these chief, Native American, and he's about to die, and he tells him, like, you got to believe, and he's like, do you really, wouldn't you like to go to heaven? And
Mm.
these chief looks him like totally confused, like, why would I want to go to heaven? But you can live eternally. He says, like, why would I want to go to heaven and live eternally? I don't get it. Because if my relationship with you brings me in, but my son is left out,
Mm.
I have. Why would I prize heaven more than my son? He has no, like, he cannot grasp that, right? And somehow in this story, in which people who are lost exist to prove the point, right? That basically control group and an experiment. People who don't believe in Jesus, they are gonna die. They're just control group, right? Because they don't know. And you who do know, so you would rather, he says, I would rather be lost then I would rather die and not have eternal life. It's much better. And so that which made me think is like, for sure, me too, right? Because I think if you bypass the heaven for the sake of people you love, you're going to end up in hell, right? If there is such a thing, right? If there is such a thing, you will walk into hell, and the first person you will meet there will be Jesus. Because he stays and he is remnant. He would never do such a thing. And it is actually, in some ways, I don't know even where to begin with this, but there is almost you almost need to rebel against God in order to follow God. You know, so the issue of substance is, I would rather follow Jesus in substance than in name.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will tell me like, you know what, no, but we have this faith and all of that. I'm just like, okay, you have a daughter, right? Would you rather your daughter marry a Christian who is a jerk, or a Hindu who is Christ-like? What would you like to do? This is your choice right now. Unless you think that a Hindu person cannot be Christ-like. Do you really think that? No, I really do think they can. Right? So that is your choice. You know, and slowly but surely, it's you get burden of being these like God manager, you know, like a curating God to the world and being in the known and just letting go of that sense that you are a broker somehow of God in the world. And it's such a you know, it's a big burden that we carry, you know, a lot of people. But once you let go and let it be, suddenly there's grace everywhere. I tried to convince people to be Christians for a number of years, and when I gave up on it, then people became interested.
The irony of ironies.
Yeah, because people are not interested if your God is actually at your service. If you're in charge. If you're in charge of God, I'm not interested. Like somehow that doesn't appeal. But if you're not, tell me more about it. Show me how to follow. Show me how to, you know. And so, yeah. And I feel like in my life, it has been it's almost like it's like I feel like it's another Exodus. So Exodus is Jews came out of Egypt, right? And then there was Judaism came out of the localized religion and in form of Christianity came to the world, right? And then the next Exodus is to come out of Christianity
yes
into a bigger reality, into the kingdom of God, right? That is different from Christianity in scope and quality, right? So rather belong to this kingdom of God that Jesus talked about than to belong to 501c3 delineated organization, non-profit group that has a board. You know, that's what it boils down to, that church today is basically defined by the board on a tax reports. I mean, this is what structures the organization in the eyes of the world.
Yeah, it's like the domestication of it, the final and continuating domestication of, or colonization of the faith.
Right. So for me, I try to develop to have my attention and see daily spaces as transformational spaces, as cathedrals, daily rituals as sacred rituals. It's not that there is no sacred, it's much more expansion of the sacred. And as in Islam says, you know, that nature is a mosque without walls.
I like that.
You know, the world is a mosque without walls, and I feel like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like that's how it works. It is just that our imagination limits what God is or where God is. It even embraces atheism and anti-theism. Because because the last thing that God is worried about, whether you believe in him or not, that's like so irrelevant to God. That's just like, who really cares about that?
And this is a I mean, and this is such a real tough thing to conceive for many people, because the conception of God, or the conception of this deity, it seems to be so frivolous. It seems to be so capricious. It seems to be so hung up on sort of like a self a self marketed concern,
Cosmic
like
ego trip, like,
I need
oh, you
people to
don't
believe in
worship
me.
me, you don't worship me. That makes me so sad and mad. Like,
How dare you not believe in me and not have you?
yeah,
How
for,
no?
me, sooner or later you come to a place where you have to say, like, you know, God is basically saying, you don't have to believe in me. You can even hate me, curse me. Let's stop talking about that. What are you
Yeah,
going to do about the neighbor who is in
yeah,
need?
yeah.
What are you going to do about these species that you are destroying? What are you
Mm,
going to do about joy that you feel in yourself? What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with all this beauty around you? Like, tell me about that. That's what
yeah.
I'm interested in.
I
Uh,
mean, I think of like relationships, like maybe romantic relationships. You know, when I spent a year and a half in Australia, I was at Hillsong College, so I went to the worship music mecca, and I was there, and I got to a point where I was like, this is so overrated. This whole dynamic of orgasmic, dynamic sort of music, transcendent thing of us telling God the same thing over and over and over again. And I think of a relationship. So you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or you're in a relationship, and you're constantly telling them how amazing they are. These are all your interactions are. How I am so amazed by your eyes. They're just so beautiful. No other conversation happens. No other interaction happens. This is the only thing going. Only this is, oh, you're so amazing. You're so amazing. To me, it seems so sterile. It seems so lacking of substance. So it's like, I even at that point, I didn't realize, but I was like, how is this a relationship? All I'm doing is constantly saying the same thing over and over and over again. It's like, it doesn't seem. It seems so hierarchical, like a hierarchy, like king. And I think it has to do with the dynamics that we define king, being ruled, us king, in the thing, and how we and how the world has defined the kingdoms and whatnot.
yeah, I mean, in Isaiah 58, in one of the books in the Bible, it says, like, I'm really not interested in this
Mm,
thing here. How about we go and and then it lists what you can do, in the world. Uh, and somehow unnamed love is really love that matters. Like, we try to we so rush to name the love, you
oh
know.
my god.
And so when you are dating, you need to keep this unnamed love long, perhaps all of your life, perhaps for the rest of your life. You're
Forever.
a person that you love should have a sense that you love them more than you can ever express, that you ever want to express. So naming love too soon is sort of stopping things.
Oh my god, that's so on point. So on point.
Like, it brings it to an end. Like, you have good friends and you are like in the subway and it's great, and you're all like 15 and it's been a great day, and everybody's experiencing something that they have never experienced before.
Yeah.
And then there's something in them is being built for the rest of their lives, right? They are relating, and somebody says, aren't we great friends?
Doom.
And it's like, what? Oh,
It's
it
almost
is
like
just
it's
that?
almost like jinxing it.
Yeah.
And that happens into like romantic relations. I do that so many times. I'm like, I need to put a name on this. It just gives
Oh,
me
yeah.
a certain level of like like certifying it. It's like, please give me the patent. I need to
Right,
run with it.
right.
And
Yeah.
it's such a self-sabotaging thing
Yeah. I
to
mean,
do it.
time can come for naming, but it will impose itself on you. And it's because probably the name is running out of its usefulness, and then you name it so you can move on.
Yeah.
But we are not invite to label things. We invite to
To
experience.
experience.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
experience life, not to solve it.
Yes, and it's so hard because that's kind of how that's where the continuous deconstruction comes in, because that's what we're constantly fed in music and movies and everything that surrounds us, in friends, in their relationships. It's like in the way that we interact with each other. Like, for example, keeping this topic about relationships, like, so have you asked her yet? Has she asked you yet? Has it, like, this whole, like, and I understand that there's an exciting element of course, but this is not to assume this rigid thing, but to not sabotage the wonder, to not hijack it. And it's hard because you have to be very self-aware of, okay, so why am I wanting to put a label on it? Why am I wanting to ask this question? That goes into my, for example, when I started getting to CBT and cognitive behavior therapy, why am I having these thoughts? How can I reconstruct them? Because it challenges the defaultive thought process that we think is just supernatural. Oh, that's just how things are meant to be. And it's usually
Yeah.
not. That just brings drama. This is not how things are meant to be. Anyways, I want to ask you. You're sharing these things about that could be somewhat controversial in some things. I understand that you were an Adventist pastor for
Hmm.
some time, or you're still. I don't know.
Yeah, for about like 10 years I was ordained. Yeah. Hmm.
In that pilgrimage, navigating that realm, that institutionalized realm, did you encounter problems? Like, were you a problematizer in that realm? And I just like stories and anecdotes. Do you have maybe some stories where, like, for example, you sharing this dynamic or the substance of Jesus, it could have some resistance? So did you have in that pilgrimage of being a pastor of this denomination, did you start experiencing hard resistance, or moments where maybe you felt like, I probably need to vacate this
Hmm.
realm?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, even, I mean, there's like, it has been years and years of struggle. Like a lot of people like myself who have been part of a organized religion have come to a place where they had to make some choices, right? And I at first, when I was like becoming sort of rebellious, I was like, yeah, church is so close-minded and all of that, and I can't. But then later I realized that people who have stayed and people who are part of organized religion, they're not inferior in any way, or it's not that they don't understand something. And I sometimes feel, did I do the right thing that I actually uh, left, right? Because church is not, there's not a problem with the church. The only problem is that church thinks that it is different than other groups. It's just that it wants to be in a driver's seat. It wants to be about it all the time.
Yeah.
It is using the kingdom of God to grow itself instead of the other way around. And so church is just a group of people trying to do their best,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like everybody else. And I feel like for me, I didn't want to sacrifice. I wanted more freedom. I didn't want to spend so much energy of trying to convince the gatekeepers that it is okay, that that God is on the outside. And I decided to step on the outside, and for most people who do it consciously and say, I'm going to go and God is on the outside, their intuition always comes true. Your intuition is true. You come out during the service to a parking lot across the street, and there's a tailgate party, and people are doing grill, and Jesus with them flipping sausages, and they're having and Jesus is good and well in the world, and God is awaiting for you on the outside, and you come in to that party, and they tell us your story.
Yeah.
Right? So you are not turning away from God. You're actually turning
to
full presence in the world as it is.
Yeah.
In reality, not in a structured, constructed, reality that is inside. Although people who are inside, they're totally worth care and love, and all of that is important. But I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up for sort of adventure that has ended and revolution that has ended, and I signed up because I signed up to Christianity because it promised me change and revolution. It promised me to open my world, right? And it started closing in. I decided that it's time to migrate again, because the vows were sort of, I vow that I'm having a calling as a pastor, right? And that I'm going to serve here. And then you need to undo your vows, to break your vows.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't talk enough about breaking of the vows, how gracious the world is. So you have right to break the vows. And it's okay. It's not shameful or bad or inconsistent. That's how life works. You break the promises you should have never made, or you expect people to fulfill promises they have never made.
I like that you mentioned that too.
And so it's I think it's all bathed in grace, from top to bottom.
Do you before I really want to hear about this new project you've been venturing into, within the kitchen. But I also like hearing stories of migration. You come from Croatia. I understand, back when you were living there, I don't know if it was Yugoslavia back then, or
when I left.
very, very an area that was very tense with inner and outer conflict with the neighboring countries. I've always, and this is just a bit of a funny anecdote. I've always found, and this is kind of a bit funny because I didn't know much about Croatia, but I found Croatia quite interesting. But it was only because of basketball, and I don't mean to say only because basketball is a big thing in Croatia, and it has offered the world some great talents, And I remember seeing Toni Kukoc played, and he was kind of like my lens into Croatia. And then when I was in Australia, I met this beautiful Croatian lady, and I thought, wow, it's the first Croatian I actually meet, and she was so wonderful. And I thought it was so interesting, this intersection of meeting a person that is from a complete different culture, complete different country, and it's an everyday experience, but I find it like such a sacred space, to be able to share.
Yeah.
And then when I read a little bit on the history of Croatia, I could maybe relate a little bit with Puerto Rico. That the struggle of being your own country, of that fight against oppressive regimes, and that struggle for identity. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about your Croatian story, and also this is being the place that saw you grow, saw you born, kind of brought you up, and then you coming to this new space, this new land, completely different. And what is it like for you as a Croatian living in the U.S., as we say, the diaspora, and as you've been here for such a long time? What does Croatia mean to you now? Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, these are you're touching the nerve, always with these questions about identity, and stories that were holding me, and then change in those. And I mean, yeah, when I left, it was Yugoslavia at that time. So my Croatian identity was sort of like very sort of mild, like we were all part of. It's like having a New York State identity here versus American identity, right? Uh, and so when I came here, yeah, it was always a shock when you come, because you encounter something, uh, another way of being in the world as an individuals in society, that you measure with the measuring sticks of where you came from. So you are only ranking things and experiencing things the way you have experienced them there, but you are missing things that you have never measured before or experienced before, right? So usually when you come to new culture, you either like are very judgmental and saying, oh, this is so inferior and blah, blah, blah. And then some time passes and then you flip. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm now discovering this, and that. And then you judge your own culture until eventually you find out there are different ways to be in the world. And to go back, at one point we had to decide whether we'll go back or not. It was, you go back, you lose something; you stay, you lose something, right? So what choice, what kind of a world, what kind of place you want to live in, and be with. So we opted to. We never thought we would stay. When we came, we were like, we're not going to stay in the United States. And in order to sustain that, we were very judgmental of the United States. Like, I mean, it was just like, really, you need that much shopping square footage?
Yeah.
That's insane. Why do you need, like 50 feet of different breads?
And what year was this?
I don't know. It was like in the 1990s.
Because I remember when my previous partner, German, came here to the U.S. and she came to a supermarket, and this is only 5-6 years ago. She was astounded at the amount of cereals and the amount of in the supermarkets. Too much.
Yeah. I mean, it would be great if there is a, like, I mean, obviously we were snooty Europeans. We were like, man, you have 500 kinds of bread and they're all bad. Like, there is no good bread here.
Yes.
There is, like, I would rather have 5 good choices. And then you realize, oh my goodness, like, so many things are structured differently in terms of size and the worldview and how everything works. And then over time, you start to figure out the good things. At first, I was annoyed by, Americans always like smiling and how are you? And I was about to say how I am, but they leave. It's just the greeting. So I would, judge that. But I learned to really love, American worldview and the way they relate. And it's what you see is what you get. There's not too much explaining what you really think and feel. I trust what you're saying, and it's your problem if you're not doing it. In Europe, is much more like, oh, that's what you're saying, but what you're really thinking, it's just always like that. It's much more sort of continental, double meaning, hiding kind of a feel to it. And United States was always more direct, and that was a refreshing thing for me to learn to live like that. And there were just fantastic people here. For our Vote Common Good program that we did for the last couple of years, traveling around the country and trying to get religiously inclined voters to not vote Republican in the next election. So when this thing happened with COVID, then we had to go online, as I said. And one of the programs that I kind of took on and did it's called American Love, Cooking Up the Common Good. So I made a cooking show in my kitchen for 10 weeks every Monday, and we went to 10 swing states celebrating those swing states worldview and stories and the way they see toughness and kindness and all of those kind of things through their food. And celebrating, for me as an immigrant, I got so much love from different people in the United States who respected me and held me like I always belong here. It was just so amazing, and I wanted to celebrate that. And I think that's what America really is. It has a much more an immigrant myth than heroes myth. And I feel like a lot of people feel like immigrants, but they're not. They feel like, oh, just because you have been born here for 5 generations, and it doesn't mean you don't feel like you are misplaced. We all feel misplaced. The change is happening so fast. Everybody is thrown off from the reality they know right now. And so to give each other compassion for that, so that we say, oh, okay, now we can learn from immigrants. How do you grow into a place you don't know? And we take on that identity as well, even though we are here, because I thought I knew, about communication and medicine and politics, but every week I'm proven that I'm sort of like in a new world.
I lost your video image, Samir, just right now. Let me see. What if you try to come back? I'm going to take you out. Try to come back at the same link. I think it should be fine. Give me a second. Okay. So try to come back and we'll see. We'll see if we can have it work again. Let me just write them. And then we're almost coming to the end of this Tertuliando. So bear with us. Okay. All right. So right now we're waiting for Samir Selmanovic to come back again. Had a little tiny technical problem. But as he's talking to us about his Kitchenhood project that he has been embarking on for these past few, I think it's maybe during this pandemic that he's started doing this. So let's see if we can have him come aboard. Greetings to everyone who's tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. Always say if you have any questions or comments, you're more than free to share. So sometimes we feel that we're interrupting the conversation, but you're fine. You can leave any comments or any questions that you might have in place. Let's see. Okay, here we go. We got him here. All right. It's just to remind us that technology is not almighty. So you're telling us a little bit about the Kitchenhood and your story. You're coming in with your perspective of immigration and also the flavors of the kitchen. I don't know if that takes a little bit of a place into it. I've never eaten Croatian cooking, but I'm sure it's phenomenal. Do you bring a little bit of that into the table? Tell us, give us a little bit. You gave us a little bit of a backstory, but talk to us a little bit about that, kind of like the potential that you see in that project, and what do you think happens in the kitchen that you think is worthy of to the point of doing this project?
Yeah, I mean, there has been some serious anthropological work done in recent decades on the impact of cooking on human beings. And basically the conclusion there is, and I think it holds over these years, that it takes a kitchen to be human. That the only defining characteristic we are separated from other species is that we cook. And cooking changed us dramatically from who we were. We look different. Our physiology was different. Our communication was different. Because we had to, we had like a big mouth and like and our brains were smaller, and we were not able to actually pause, stop, be bored, and give meaning to things before we invented fire, right? And then when the fire came along, we were able to communicate so much more energy that our brain needed, because our brain, if you would eat just raw foods for like 20 years, you would disappear, because you need to eat food that has been treated for the energy where we are right now. So people were around the fire, and later they had the pot, and they were like, okay, so what was that about today? And then they started constructing meaning and stories, and started creating narratives and planning and memories, because they could. And that separated them from, competitors, whatever was there, because they were able to give meaning to things. And kitchen, like in ancient times, there was this word mageros, which was the same name for priest, butcher, and a cook, right?
Wow.
Because the first transformation that happened for human beings, first alchemy, was take the world that is basically against you, and you against it, and transformed what was against you, what used to be poisonous or could attack you, right? And actually take it into your mouth to be you, right? Actually, who we are, we create ourselves through our mouth. At first, we are created to mother's mouth because she's eating, we are created.
It's true.
But then when we come out, everything that we are is, our mouth is the door of material world of the outside and who we are, right? And it's a first miracle we witness when we are in a kitchen as kids and we watch our parents or mom preparing something, that the world can be changed and trusted, and that is on our side, and that we cooperate with it, that we need to serve it and it serves us. The first time we realize that outside world and my inner identity can actually be one, and that we are connected, right? So that this is the first notion for us that the world is part of us, and that we give to the world. That's why kids, when they have a first kind of like a poop, they realize, oh, part of me is leaving me, but other things are coming to me. Oh, I am actually, oh, where's the boundaries, and it's a first mystical experience that we get adjusted to, right? And I feel, kitchen is a place where, arts and science and politics and economy, everything converges there.
Yeah.
And what is particularly magical about kitchen is that it is a mystical place, in which I remember I was talking to this Lawrence Kushner. He's a rabbi who is a mystic. He's well known, and I was years ago on one of his workshops, and I asked him about mystical experience, and he says, yeah, everybody has mystical experience. It's just about 20 seconds every 2 years.
20 seconds every 2 years.
It's where you are in completely in that kind of a zone that you are there is no boundary between you and the world. Yeah. I mean, you can replicate it maybe more with now psychotropic drugs, but and have a kind of a sense of what is that like. Uh-huh. But in my mind, it is like a place where your presence and mindful presence, which is Eastern religions, is full, right? You're fully present, and you are fully inhabiting your narrative as well, right? Because our brain is made, you are either making up a story or you are fully present. So for example, right now, you're either listening to me or you're thinking what you're going to say next.
Yeah.
But you're not doing both.
Yeah.
So if you're just listening to me, you are trusting that what you're going to say next is going to come. It's just going to show up, right?
Yeah.
If you really listen. And it goes both ways, right? But so our brain, we are either interpreting or we are fully present. And you know how that is in relationships, right? But a kitchen is a place where you can be mindful, like in meditation, you're breathing, you're cutting carrots, right?
Yeah.
But you also need to be alert at the same time and know that, there's a heat, there's knives, and that there's a purpose for this dinner. You're preparing it for a people that you relate to. And this has come from somewhere that you're grateful for, right? And so you're bridging this story and presence in one moment, which is almost neurologically impossible. It is where electricity is all kind of like in your head goes like off, right? I think that's what great chefs and people who practice cooking are addicted to, right? So that's one thing. And another thing that really makes kitchens stand out and a table is that all great decisions have a kitchen table test, right? They need to pass a kitchen table conversation, whether it is in deciding for a country or for yourself. Why do we need to, around the meal, make decisions and have ideas and things actually click and hands are shaken and things are happening between family members and we date around it and all of that? It is because it is the only place in which you are enacting with all of your senses that you are safe in the world, that you are not attacked, that the world, you're not a stranger in this world, that this world is not there to root you out, that you are not on the enemy territory, that this is the moment where you are tasting, feeling, smelling, all senses. No art uses all senses except culinary art. So culinary art, the only art that uses all senses, and the moment you're experiencing it, you cannot chew and swallow and be afraid or hate, right? That's why you cannot bring the weapons to the table in cultures when you eat, right? And in Japan, you cannot bring knife, anything that cuts, on the table. When you have sushi and all of that, notice that there is no sharp objects there, right? They have a whole philosophy about that.
Yeah.
But the issue here is that this vote common good thing that we did, for example, just give you an example. It was two of us eating roasted lamb in a Senegali restaurant and having a little bit of wine that we came up with the idea. And that idea was there because we felt with all of our senses that we are part of the kingdom of God just by eating and being with one another. And then later we had the vision that we're going to go around the country and came up with a name during the breakfast. It was 20 of us. So what I'm saying is the Kitchenhood is like neighborhood or brotherhood or sisterhood. It doesn't matter who you are, you're different, but we have these connection that we understand that we are human beings and that neither you nor I are strangers in this world and that we are both welcome and that you're welcome to my place. And we are almost like a conspiracy that goes from kitchen to kitchen in the world. So I want to invite people and I help them sort of go through practices of personal growth through experiencing, through cooking and hosting, rather than driving to some workshop place or going somewhere and then sitting on a chair and having mindfulness practice for an hour, when you can do it, right at home, right here. And so I feel like, and you can learn to enter the unknown because there's such a vast territory there, and be comfortable with not knowing and ask questions and be an apprentice and be curious and train your intuition and retrain your intuition. And you can take that into other parts of life because you have experienced it in your bodily experience, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of things we know, but we don't experience it in our bodies. And what's the worst thing that happened? Dinner is burned. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all gone through it. So
yeah. So that's what I want to do. I think time has come for something like that. Zen monasteries have done that a lot in the past. They have a whole discipline of, the total how would I put it, the the path to total kitchen enlightenment.
Oh,
That they use basically a process of rejuvenating your body as a spiritual process, that so seriously that other people, you do other things,
well, it makes a
right?
lot of sense. I mean, it makes a heap of sense that to have the kitchen be maybe like the starting sanctuary to
Right.
to formulate yourself, because there's so much of it that's actually very literal, because you're inputting energies into your own ecosystem. Of course,
Stories.
yeah.
Every piece, everything you eat has a story.
Oh,
It has your connection with somebody who has picked these strawberries.
yeah. Yeah, it's very, I mean, in my
Essential workers during the pandemic,
it brings us to that, to consciousness. In my experience, and I share this sometimes, like culinary my culinary brains have brought in a little bit ever since 12 years ago I became vegetarian. So I had to try new stuff out, because I was I was leaving some stuff I was frequently eating out. So I needed to explore a new realm of vegetables, of grass, of leaves, of all kinds of greens that I did not explore before. I was not eating beans before that, and I explored into that. And then 6 years ago, I became a vegan, which was a little bit easier because I was doing it with my partner at the time. But experiencing flavors, bringing to the kitchen new flavors, seasoning, but also being connected to everything we eat has a story. And for us, of course, we don't partake of some things because of that story, but we also have to take into account, where does this come from? Where do these vegetables come from? They didn't just fall from the sky. They have a
Right.
story. They have a story to tell. And also, I think the overtly sanitized supermarket experience has distanced us from the natural way things happen. Things don't grow in the supermarket.
Mhm.
There
Yeah.
isn't some vine that is secretly connected to some electric plug that's happening that's making all things
Right.
grow in aisles. So having a connection to where things come from, and then in the process, as soon as things come to your kitchen, when you're cutting things out, I mean, it is very therapeutic to enter in that. I mean, it could slow you down.
Mhm.
It could break that myth of fast food. No,
Yeah.
we don't want
Yeah.
fast food.
And it's one of those joys of life that are sort of not acquired, but they need to be learned like other joys in life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, I didn't understand the joy of walking when I was young, but as I'm growing older, I feel like, oh my goodness, like if I can go for a walk for half an hour just by myself, it's
Mm.
heaven. Like if I can afford that, joy of a nap, right? Um, and I feel like when people say, I see sometimes these commercials, like they're popular, like, hey, they'll deliver the food for you, and then they're like, the husband says, oh, we don't have to cook. Amazing. And imagine saying that about sex.
Yeah, yeah,
Can you
yeah.
help me have it faster?
It's true.
Can you help me? Like, oh, we don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's such a good example.
Like, yeah, that's amazing. If you have neglected learning about your
Oh,
own sexuality, exploring it, about others, and have a normal lifespan in which you had proper sex education when you were small, and dating and all of this, and you come to a healthy place,
yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah,
in which that's the last thing you want to rush,
yeah.
right? So why would you rush cooking, and you would like to have a foreplay a long time?
And that's because the way we approach it, how we
Exactly.
have approached it.
And because we are in a place where culture has put on you that you only need to have these sort of an end product,
Yeah.
just like consuming it. Um,
Yeah. I'm hungry. I eat. I'm not hungry anymore. And
yeah,
go on to the next thing.
yeah. So there's this commercials, hunger, satisfy it. This voice like selling a car or something. And so, there's a lot of um, yeah, there's a lot of movement right now with Michael Pollan and his books about like how average time we spend in the kitchen has been cut down for 2 hours or in last 10-15 years, and our
Wow.
watching of people cooking has been increased for 2 hours, right? So we have like a flood of these cooking shows and all of that, right? But I've come to believe that eating, cooking, and watching cooking are all human experience, necessary human experiences. It is beautiful to watch somebody cook because
Yes.
because that's the first experience of us growing up when we were watching our parents do it.
Yeah. Or grandparents or
Yeah, that
yeah.
something is right with the world, and we come to that place, and it's a beautiful place. So I'm not
Mm.
kind of judgmental of like, oh, people just watch shows. I'm like, yeah, there's a reason they watch shows.
Yes. Is a
You know,
nostalgia to return to that
yeah,
place, perhaps.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think some of that, I mean, some of that silver lining is that, people are maybe returning a little bit back to the kitchen to experiment, to replicate that, to
Mm.
be like, to get ideas. And also that there's a continual encouragement. I feel some friends when they're posting pictures of what they created. And then there's the conversation. How did you make that? What
Uh,
did you use? And then I think there's also that dialogue of experimentation, of I want to be able to experience this you experience. Can you share with me? And
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
fascinating to
Yeah.
ongoing. So there is some silver linings into. I mean, from a very narrowed point, I'll be like, oh, why people sharing all what they eat, la la la, just always sharing what they eat. But you know, but when it's a product of their kitchen, I think it's so valuable. It's kind of like they're, this I just made this, and I want to
Mhm.
share this
Yeah.
with the world. And another person
And
sees
why
it, and they
not?
can get more ideas. Yeah, I know. Why not? Of course, there's so much shitty things being shared. Why not this plate that you spend time and with your hands and elaborate it, and then here it is, and then you brought it onto your body, but before you decide to share it, I think that's I think
Yeah.
that's commendable.
And if like, why would you like? I see I have these little pots on the wall here. I bought them for myself for the Father's Day.
Self gift.
But some people have a guitar there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because it's art and because it's part of your identity and it reminds you
Mm,
of what matters. Well,
I
this is
like that.
my art.
I
And
like that.
if you made a song, you share it. Well, why do people need to share their songs or poems?
Because the
Because they're
world needs it.
creative people. That's why, because they're
Yes.
human beings
Yeah.
and they feel that calling, to do it. And so respect it and enjoy it. And if you don't, fine, you don't need to.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I like it when people do that. I have this Facebook group. It's called Home Chefs Rising, and our sort of like a tagline is cooking changes everything. Uh,
Hmm.
but people cannot post pictures and links to any website or to any
Uh,
professional thing.
it has to be their stuff.
Yeah, it has to be their stuff. They can only
Yeah.
write their recipe and put their pictures.
I love that. Yeah, that's cool.
you
That's
know
cool.
so
It's a
so
way of
it's not
curating it.
it's not this kind of like a food porn going on, like
Yes.
people who have spent
It's too
yeah,
easy.
yeah,
It's
you
too
have to
easy.
create, yeah,
It's too easy. I
create
want to see
your
how
own
you
thing,
made it. I want to see how you made it
right.
and show it with the world. Something I've really enjoyed this talk, and I always close with this question, and I like I think of Chilean author Eduardo Galeano, and he has a story he shares that it was not it's not a quote of his, but it's a story he shares of utopia, of the utopias, and it's this setting of you know s- the utopia kind of set there in the horizon, and that you know taking 5 steps towards it, but then realizing that it also takes 5 steps forward, and then you take 5 more steps forward, and it also takes 5 more steps forward. So then the question arises: is what is the point? What is the point of the utopia? And then he's like, well, to keep moving forward, to keep moving forward. So I ask you,
Yeah.
Samir, as the last question, and to give you the last word,
Uh-huh.
what are the utopias that are set in the horizon for you that keep you moving forward, even when it's unattainable, platonic? What are those utopias that keep you
Yeah.
moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful question, because people, a lot of us have sort of given up on utopias, and just wanted to, before to buy some time to think about those beautiful things that you are talking about, is that if you think of what you know as like a circle, right? And so what you know is inside of the circle, what you don't know is outside of the circle, right? And so your touch, your identity and who you are is it's the circle touching the unknown, right? So you can only grow the circle. The more you grow the circle, the bigger the surface with the unknown, right? So basically, your capacity to not know limits what you can know, right? Because you can't grow until you develop capacity to not know more and more,
Mm-hmm.
because you're expanding, right? And so capacity for not knowing is such a life-giving thing. Uh, and I feel, what helps me, what my utopia is. I mean, one of the things that helps me is that we have eternal life, all of us, right? We have eternal life because two reasons. One is that you and I are here because people were there before, and without their love, we wouldn't be here, right? There's so much care and love went into you and me being here. Imagine all of our parents and grandparents and their parents and their parents, their parents, growing up, changing diapers, working hard, falling in love, making a child, and then child having a life, and it goes on and on like that until it comes to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it was not for them, there wouldn't be us. Therefore, they are living internally through us.
No.
They have internal life in us, right? And whatever we do is released in the world, and nothing is lost in the kingdom of God. No good deed, no act of love, no creative act will be lost. It's released mystically into the space, and it's going into the future forever, right? So that's one of the things that I really love to know, that just because at the end I'll have, I don't know, late stage of diabetes, and die in some dingy hospital somewhere in Manhattan, that doesn't mean I'm not living forever.
No.
You know what I mean? Like that's irrelevant. That's just an event that's part of the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not actually separately from life at all, right? And it doesn't have to be through children. It can be, that's one way, but that's not
It's
the most
unlimited to that.
important way at all,
Oh.
right? We are affected in such a different way. So that's one thing I look, and I also feel that the time will come where we will understand ourselves so much that we will not need fear to feel alive.
Oh wow.
Because a lot of people we are so polarized, and things are in this world because people cannot let go. They think they need to be afraid in order to feel being alive.
Yeah.
But fear is not going to leave us for a long, long time, at least for next, I don't know, 20,000 years probably. But because it's how we came where we are, it served us.
Mm-hmm.
so to respect that fear and make it functional in your life. So you're afraid of things that you choose. You can direct your fear, towards losing a planet rather than fear of you.
Yeah.
So since we have to have a fear, let's have a fear of things that are worthy of our fear.
Yeah.
Right? So we'll be able to, I feel like my utopia is that fear will become just part of the information we have about ourselves, that we can use the way we use our hands, right? Instead of completely like absorbing and wreaking havoc, because we cannot adjust ourselves so quickly in our evolution to where we are right now, when there is no, where the only danger, that more danger is coming from our fear of danger than on danger itself.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And so, yeah, that's one of the things. That's a kind of like all long-term utopias, way ahead there.
As it is.
But I feel like for maybe for our, for our country right now, I feel there will be some sort of I feel that whatever is going to happen is going to surprise us all. Whatever is going to solve this problem, it's not something we will come up with. It's going to just happen to us, and we don't know how, because everything that we are imagining carries with itself the problem that has created.
Perpetuates it.
Yeah, and we're going to be surprised. Something is going to happen. Something is going to transpire that in our species have always been a wayfinders, and that's the way I like to talk about this. Wayfinding is a positive way to say being in the unknown, because people don't want to be in the unknown. They just shut down when I talk to them about it. Like, oh, you got to be uncertain and you got to be comfortable with that. They're like, yeah, goodbye.
Yeah, it's
but
easier to do
a
that.
wayfinding is a human skill that only humans have, that we are addicted to going where we are not to go into unknown. Although we are afraid of it, we know that future joy is there. No other species do that.
Yeah.
No other species do that. Human beings are the only species that say, where is the line of safety? All right, well, how about I put 1 foot across that line?
Yeah,
right?
true.
And I think we will do that with ourselves and discover a way, maybe not a new territory, new continent, or a new technological thing, but we will discover something about ourselves,
within ourselves,
as humans, that will help us, that will make us, they'll save us, they'll like allow us to move on. And that will come probably from artists. They'll probably come from unexpected, because artists are those who see the unknown and they don't know how, and they want to express it.
Yeah.
So the art is the way for them to express that. And so artists are those who are on the edge of the unknown. They're mystics, along with scientists who also, doubt everything they know. And I feel like that's where it's going to come from. And it's not going to come from, well, that might be a surprise too. Anyway.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, like the particular sectors that we might seem or we might deem as the unlikely ones. One never knows.
Right, exactly.
One never knows. Man, Samir, thank you so much for sharing a bit of you here. I really appreciate it, value it. I learn and I unlearn, and these talks are definitely in that realm, in that pedagogical realm of making this a forever classroom type of space. So I thank you for continuing that experience today for me and likely for everyone who passed by here.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great honor. And so those of you who have been listening, I mentioned this Facebook group, Home Chefs Rising.
Again,
Home Chefs Rising. That's a group. But I also have this. The Kitchenhood is opening in September. Actually, yeah, late September, and it's called the Kitchenhood.life. The Kitchenhood.life, not .com, .life, and that's where it's a page to sort of stay in touch. But that would be
Phenomenal. So look that up. I felt September was so far away, but it's like
oh yeah. Oh my goodness, it's like how I'm gonna make it up until tomorrow.
I know it's like it seems closer than August. So anyways, everyone who came in, thank you so much. See you here tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day until we don't see each other anymore. So I always like to close with the words of famous astrologer, Puerto Rican astrologer, who I mentioned, and I give a little dibs here for anyone who watches Netflix. Has a wonderful documentary called Mucho Mucho Amor, and his name was Walter Mercado, and he was a famous Puerto Rican astrologer, and he would always close his segments with saying, que tengan, so may you have mucha paz, much peace, mucha paz, y mucho amor. So everyone, stay safe. Don't disconnect, Samir. So see you next time, guys. Bye.
Okay, mucho